very briefly and simply, hopefully anyway, like Hamlet, I am known to go on a bit. What is this speech about? Well, it is the speech that every director in the world has had to say since the dawn of theater, or they would have done if directors had been around that long. More on that later. It's saying, for the love of God, don't overplay it, but don't be too subtle either. It's that narrow wire that actors have had to walk on since people started doing this. I've heard that speech in modern English any number of times. Like, don't go too big, don't wave your hands, don't get too loud, but not too soft either. People still need to hear you at the back of the house. We can't just, do things for Joe and Jane off the street. We also have, a subscriber base who are very sophisticated. Okay? So there's tough needles to thread. Now, why is this important? Well, the first reason is that I happen to think that this speech comes maybe the closest. There might be a few other examples in the entire collected works, but I feel like this speech comes the closest to maybe Shakespeare's real voice. He's probably had to say this in maybe so many words to his actors any number of times. And if he was anything like modern theater people, he probably took a perverse joy in getting the ability to say it by proxy through one of his other actors to his entire company in front of the audience. He probably, just shaming him just a little bit. Remember, middle of the show. Keep all this in mind. Now, the second reason this is important is based off of a theory that this is probably as much direction as Elizabethan actors ever got. As I alluded to earlier, directors actually haven't been around that long. In fact, but in the time when Shakespeare was writing this, we hadn't even gotten to the position of the actor-manager hadn't even come into existence. That was maybe 2 centuries away, I think, give or take a few decades. So, for one, the position didn't really exist, and 2, there wasn't really any time. There's a theory that says that, and it's a theory that I happen to subscribe to, that Elizabethan plays didn't really have rehearsal time, other than for things like fights and dances. This is based on a number of things, such as the fact that there were it's been looked at the number of new plays that premiered in a very short period of time, sometimes just a matter of 1 or 2 weeks. 2, as similar to today, many actors held down alternate employment, some of it not that reputable. And 3, sort of even more narrowing it down, plays could only be performed during the daytime. There was artificial light, but it was all based on, burning something. And as London found out in 1666, many, many things were flammable in London. So no one wanted to take that chance. So plays were done during the day, which meant that there was no time in the day to be able to rehearse the entire thing, given that they were premiering new works so often. So what this theory says is that the actors were given a script, or more likely only their part of the script. So in case said actor got a little bit, angry for some reason at the company manager or somebody else and decided to walk across the street to the other theater company, they couldn't just give the whole text away. They were given their part with maybe their cue line and nothing else. And were given that to memorize, basically. And maybe not even that. Maybe on the first night, maybe they even had scripts in hand. There's some conjecture about that. But a big part of what they would have had to do is, in this speech, suit the action to the word to the action. The idea is that there is a sort of, because there was no actual room or time to direct a show like this the way we do now, that there is almost a sort of a code embedded in the text itself. And it tells people what to do if they're paying attention. Now, some of it has to do with things like when you cross to a person or when you cross away from a person. Usually whether or not someone uses the words you versus thee or thou. Back then, thee or thou was actually the more intimate designation, and you, coming from the French vous, was more formal or plural. And that would indicate, like, oh, thee or thou, that means I approach you. You, oh, that means I back away. If I say we, it means everyone clumps together in a group. If I'm a king and I say we, everyone clumps on me. If I'm addressing a king and I address them as majesty or sovereign, I kneel. If I address them as highness or grace, I rise. Little things like that. More importantly, though, is the line, suit the action to the word to the action. This method is called Unrehearsed Shakespeare. And there are a lot of important rules, but the most important rule is that one. Basically, there was no such thing, according to this theory, as abstract. Very often in Shakespeare's plays, a character is describing something fantastic, but that happened off stage. Either because it's just too... it was too big a spectacle. There wasn't any way to actually stage it. Or it could have been something as simple as, hey, we've double cast this person, we're talking about them in that context, but they're on stage as another character, so we can't do this. So any number of reasons. But it often happens in the opening, describing a sort of off-stage prologue. Macbeth is an instance of this, where the bleeding sergeant comes on and talks about how great Macbeth is and how gloriously he slew his enemies, right? Well, we don't see that. But the idea is that it was the character of the sergeant would, for lack of a better term, reenact it himself, possibly using the other people on stage as placeholders. He wouldn't necessarily go full out, because again, not at least for the premiere, not everyone would know the whole play, so they wouldn't be able to fully engage in you're describing a fight, we didn't rehearse this fight. That one of the only things we can rehearse is fights, and we haven't done this one, so there were limitations. But the character of the sergeant would describe someone and would pick someone out of the company and say, you are this person, and what I am describing, you have to do. Basically, no such thing as abstract. If he couldn't get anyone in the company to do it, he might choose someone from the groundlings. Or he might try to do it himself. At any rate, this speech is a huge, laser insight into Elizabethan theater. Far more, maybe, than at first glance. And, as I said earlier, probably in Shakespeare's own words. Although when he actually gave the speech to actors, I imagine there was a lot more profanity.
Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hands thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to hear, to split the ears of the groundlings, who, for the most part, are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I would have such a fellow whipped for o'erdoing termagant. It out-Herods Herod. Pray you, avoid it. Be not too tame, neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance that you overstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end both at the first and now was and is, to hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. Now this overdone, or come tardy off, though it make the unskilful laugh, cannot but make the judicious grieve, the censure of the which one must, in your allowance, o'erweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, there be players that I have seen play, and heard others praise, and that highly, not to speak it profanely, that neither having the accent of Christians, nor the gait of Christian, pagan, nor man, have so strutted and bellowed, that I have thought some of nature's journeymen had made men, and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominably. Reform it altogether, and let those that play your clowns speak no more than what is set down for them, for they be of them that will themselves laugh, to set on some quantity of barren spectators to laugh too, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play is to be then considered. That's villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it. Go, make you ready